Welcome back to another episode of the Tracy Take. Today, Ryan and I are going to be breaking down the AFC conference and seeing who is going to win each division, in our opinion, right now after 7 weeks, and which teams are going to make the wild card and which teams are not going to make it. We have already done the NFC. If you have not seen that video, please go check it out after this video and let us know your comments and thoughts. Subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell so you can see when we create some new content. Like this video, comment on this video, and let us know your thoughts and if you think another team's going to make the playoffs. And Ryan, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
With the NFC, we kind of just went like on the playoff teams who are winning the division right now and just kind of talked about them.
Yeah.
And then we went into the wild card teams that we think have a chance. There's a much clearer line between those two groups of teams. We were talking about this before. Maybe not Denver, but I mean they're technically 12th and 3-4 and only one game back to the Browns. But there are 11 teams that I think legitimately have a shot to make the playoffs. Like the Bengals right now are the number one seed based off just tiebreakers and everything. Mm-hmm. But as we'll get into, I can see a scenario where the Bengals don't even make the playoffs, because they fall off. But, I mean, they would have to fall off a little bit because they're playing extremely well. But also because there are some really good teams that are outside the playoff hunt right now. So, I say, and we talked about this, we're going to talk about each division briefly, and then we're going to get into who we think is going to win each division and who the wild card teams are going to be. So, since we did talk about the Bengals, we're going to continue with them. Start with the AFC North, which all four teams are in the playoffs right now, or are right in the hunt. The Baltimore is 5-2; they're the 5th seed currently. The Browns are 4-3, at number 7, and Pittsburgh's are outside looking in at 3-3, but 8th overall. And the one I think that I'm nervous about the most is probably actually the Browns. They have some serious injuries, and they have some big division games coming up. They're playing the Bengals, I believe, this week. They still have to play
the Steelers. I thought.
Oh, the Steelers. Okay, yeah, that's it. And then they're playing the Bengals soon.
Yeah, they play the Bengals next week, and then after that, not a division matchup, but they play the Patriots, which could have wild card implications.
Yes, yeah. So it's going to be like not an easy road for any of these teams. But the Browns are the one I think that if they don't get these injuries fixed and things fall out or don't fall into place for them, I could see them being outside looking in. I can also see Pittsburgh being outside looking in as well.
That's what I was going to say. For me, Pittsburgh is the team that I think is on the outside looking in. They could barely beat a Russell Wilson-less Seattle team. And their schedule for me is really concerning. So they have a couple of easier games. I do expect them to beat the Browns this weekend because of those injuries. But then they play the Bears and then the Lions. So those are 3 games. The Browns is the toughest of those 3. But then their last 8 games, they have to go to the Chargers, to the Bengals, versus the Ravens, to Minnesota, versus the Titans, at the Chiefs, versus the Browns, at Ravens. All of those are playoff teams. The last 8 games, they're going to be playing playoff teams.
Oh, yeah.
And no other team in this wild card race has to play 8 playoff teams left. So for me, I think the Steelers have the toughest road. I do think probably by the end of the season, both of these teams will be on the outside looking in. But I think the Steelers definitely have a tough road for it.
Yeah. And just kind of wrap this up quickly here is I think the Bengals and Ravens. Now, as I said, there's a scenario where the Bengals wouldn't make the playoffs, but I think that there's too much fire. Excuse me. I think there's too much firepower. I think overall as a team, they're playing really well. Oh, I'm really emotional about this.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. But the thing I think that's in the Bengals' favor is they have one of the easier schedules, I think. I think the Ravens are just an above-average team, and I think at minimum they'll be a wild card. They can easily win the division. But if you look at the Bengals, though, playing the Jets this week, that's a win. They can beat the Browns. They can beat the Raiders. They can obviously beat the Steelers. Now, they can't lose to both the Browns and the Raiders and the Steelers also. But it's like there's opportunity there. If you play the Chargers,
Yeah.
Broncos, Chiefs. Right, they actually have a pretty tough schedule as well.
True. So I was just looking at it. They do have a tough road, but they have a lot of convenient matchups at home. So
Yeah,
like the Ravens and Chiefs game and the Steelers game that they have left uh, are both at Cincinnati.
yeah.
The Chargers are at Cincinnati. The 49ers are at Cincinnati. They're road games. They have to go to Las Vegas. However, going to Las Vegas is kind of like a neutral site because I don't know if you've watched some of their home games this year. Crowds have been fairly mixed on who they're rooting for.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Just
yeah,
because
that's
they're a
fair.
new team in a city that doesn't
Yeah.
have a whole ton of locals.
So I was
Uh,
thinking of the Los Angeles Chargers game when they were in Los Angeles, and the whole crowd seemed to be rooting for the Raiders. But yeah. So
yeah,
kind of moving on though to the next team, and let's move on since we're talking about the Raiders. The AFC West. This is
yeah.
another top one. The Raiders are currently in the lead of the division. The Chargers are 4-2. The
Hmm.
Chiefs are 3-4, and the Broncos are also 3-4. If there's a team I'm certain that's not going to pull forward amongst all the top contenders right now of the top 12 teams, I think the Broncos are going to fall off. I think they started out
Yeah.
3-0 against a fairly weak schedule. Not
Fairly
fairly,
weak is an understatement.
yeah, against a weak
Giants,
opening
Jaguars,
schedule.
Jets.
Yeah. And as we've seen, as they've started to play stiffer competition, also started some division games, they are just not there yet. And also,
Hmm.
depending on how long Von Miller is out, the shocking part really is actually their defense has really started to crumble a little bit.
A
Um,
little bit, yeah.
the team that, as of right now, I would not be surprised. I just with the way that they're playing, I would not be surprised if they don't pull through. But I could also absolutely see them turning it around just because of how elite they are. Back to
Yeah.
back Super Bowl appearances. Kansas City 3-4 clearly is not the team that
No.
we were expecting them to be. They have, I think, statistically the worst defense in the league, and that
Hmm.
offense is well below what we're used to.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do with their
I,
offensive line
I'm
changes.
going to leave statistics aside. I really think Kansas City might have the worst, like, they have the worst defense in the league.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I, yeah. They haven't really been able to do anything on the defensive side of the ball. And uh, offensively, they've had some struggles, which has been really interesting, just considering the fact that they are so elite. But again, because they are so elite on the offensive side of the ball, like
Hmm.
you said, I could really see them turning it around. I don't think they have the easiest road, but they also don't have the toughest. They have a pretty easy game on Monday Night Football against the Giants. Then they have to play the Packers, to the Raiders, Cowboys. The Broncos should be easy at the Chargers, and then they have to go to the Bengals at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And honestly, I at this point I really could see them finishing 9-8.
Yeah, well, because the thing is, especially just even in their division with Los Angeles and Las Vegas, some explosive offense. Well, I wouldn't consider the Raiders' offense explosive, but it's good. Like they can continuously just make nice, consistent drives and go and get
Yeah.
points. Seems like every
Well,
time. And that Chiefs
if
defense, as we already talked about, is horrendous.
yeah, if Derek Carr is going to complete 91% of his passes, we can just go ahead and pencil them in the AFC Championship game because when he goes, I think it was something like 22 for 24 for like 300 something yards and 3 touchdowns. I think
Yeah.
that was what a stat line was like. If he's going to play like that, nobody's going to beat him.
So
Sad.
with that, I think that's a good segue to the Raiders. Do you think the Raiders are at minimum a lock for the playoffs?
Um, well, here, let me look at their schedule really fast. Derek Carr's stat line for that game, by the way, was 31 for 34, 323 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick.
Mm-hmm. That's not
Uh,
bad.
no, not bad at all. I mean, I think they have a fairly easy road. Um, but even if they go 500 through the last 10 games, so that's 10-7. So I think that probably puts them in like a wild card spot.
Yeah.
However, I will say that Raiders have a tendency to fall off towards the end of the season. Uh,
Yeah.
and they could go on a losing streak. I don't think they will. I think this team is too talented for that. But injuries can take anybody out of playoff contention. But right now, I'm picturing two teams from the AFC West in the division, and it's Los Angeles and Las Vegas.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing we haven't really talked about too much. And I think the Chargers have a lot of can even have room
Yeah.
for improvement where they could potentially even pass the Raiders. I think that their defense. I need to double check the statistics, but I think normally I think they are on average a little bit of a better defense, and they have I think more
The Chargers?
offensive. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I would need to double
Yeah,
check.
they got beat pretty bad by the Ravens last week, and they had a bye.
Yeah, they did.
But
That
yeah,
is
their,
true.
their
Yeah.
defense is pretty good. They struggled with the runs up the middle. So I think they have
Hmm.
to play the Titans later on in the
Yeah.
year. Oh no, they don't.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
But speaking of
But
Titans,
yeah.
moving on.
They
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say they do have another road very similar to Las Vegas, as they have similar schedules. But I I think those two teams are almost locks. Give me a couple more weeks and I'll be more confident. But like you said, speaking of the Tennessee Titans,
Yeah, I want everyone to know that Ryan did not catch on to my segue to move on to the AFC South, which I think is much more cut and dry. I think Tennessee, I think they are in the playoffs. I think the X factor is going to be Indianapolis,
yeah,
because obviously we know Jacksonville and Houston are not going to make it.
no,
And so is Indianapolis going to give them a run for their money to make the division close? Because I think that the Titans have enough. I need to see how many more games they have. They're playing the Colts this weekend. Actually, their second time playing against them, which will be a very big indicator on how that's going to be going. But I'm pretty sure they play both Houston and Jacksonville one more time. They might actually even play Houston two more times. You can almost pencil those. I mean,
they play Houston twice and Jacksonville once.
yeah. So I don't want to say that that's not. Those aren't guaranteed wins. Nothing's a guaranteed win. But both teams, the Titans just match up so well against those guys that
Yeah,
it was just with Derrick Henry and running the ball that I mean, you can almost pencil those in as wins. So that puts them at 8-2, and they're gonna win just a couple more. They play the Dolphins, they play the 49ers, the Steelers, the Saints that they can win, and that's not including them potentially beating the Colts. So I think the Titans are the only team that I
yeah.
think is a lock. Indianapolis, what do you think Indianapolis' chances are for getting into the playoffs?
Getting into the playoffs.
Yeah.
Let me look at their schedule really fast. But I think they, along with the New England Patriots, are teams that have underperformed. And speaking of the Patriots, they play each other, which will have playoff implications. But I think they have a pretty easy road. So they play the Titans this week, which is tough. But then they come out, they play the Jets, Jaguars right after that, and then they play the Bills, Buccaneers. But then to close out the season, they're going to play the Texans, Patriots, Cardinals, which is tough, Raiders at home, which is a coin flip game, and then the Jaguars.
So for me, when I look at this, it seems like it's almost seems like it's like a one for one. They have a hard game, then an easy game, then a hard game, then an easy
Yeah,
game, or like a hard game, easy game, hard game. So
yeah.
it's like if they can just not, they need to do better than 500 for the rest of the way, because currently they are 3-4,
But
I believe.
okay, so let's say they beat the Titans this weekend. They're 4-4. Titans are 5-3, so they're a game back. I think Titans right now have the AFC tiebreaker against them because they have a better record. So then they play the Jets, Jaguars 6-4, lose the Bills 6-5, 6-6 against the Buccaneers. I'll just do this really quick in my head. 8-6. I'll give them the win against the Patriots and 9-6. So I think probably 10-7. I don't know if that beats the Texans, not the Texans, the Titans. I don't know if that beats the Titans. I just think Tennessee's gotten too far out ahead of them, and I know it's only week 7 going into week 8. But even if they win all of their winnable games, I think Tennessee just has more winnable games left.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a little bit tougher road than I expected, honestly, for the Colts. It's like with back-to-back weeks of Bills and the Buccaneers. I don't see them winning either of those games, to be honest. But Yeah, the Colts I think are going to be the X factor because I think Tennessee is a lock. Even if the Colts somehow come back and win the
Yeah.
division, I think the Tennessee's record will be good enough to at least get a
Mhm.
wild card.
Yeah.
But now
Well,
moving on to the last division, where there's also once again there's only really two teams, one of which is I think is also a lock in Buffalo. Kind of similar
yeah.
situation. However, I think New England personally might be a little bit of a better team than Indianapolis. I think their defense is more established and I think better game
Better
plans.
well-rounded.
Yeah,
Better. I think they have a better secondary, and then the fronts are fairly similar.
yeah.
I think the Colts might have a little better front, but I think that secondary is much better than the Colts secondary.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so with the Patriots schedule coming up, they are playing the Chargers, which is winnable for them. It's gonna be tough. If the
yeah,
Panthers don't change, they should beat the Panthers next week. If Baker Mayfield is still injured, they definitely can beat the Browns. That game is in New England. They can beat
I
the
think they can beat the
Falcons.
Browns either way. But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I would bet on the
potentially.
under, but I think that's a game that New England would want to.
Yeah. Now, New England still does have to play the Patriots. The Bills twice,
Yeah,
with a Colts game in between. But they end the year playing Jacksonville and Miami, two games that they definitely should win. Which I
yeah.
think is going to be huge for their schedule. Kind of, if you look at it, if they can stay healthy, because
Mhm.
neither of those teams I think are going to be in it. So they might be playing some younger guys, might be trying out some things, not trying to throw games, but just seeing what they have for next year.
Wait, the Patriots
No,
or
no, no, no. Jacksonville and
okay,
Miami. So
okay.
what I'm saying is that's a smooth way to kind of end the season. With them being
Yeah,
a
yeah,
3-4, they need to win 7 games for them, I think, to have 10 wins. Panthers that's 4, Browns 5, Falcons 6, um, Colts 7, Jags 8 and 9. I think I did that math correctly. That's going to be. I mean, that's tougher. And I even gave them some games like I don't think the Browns is a gimme. Falcons I don't think is a gimme. I mean, I'm biased, but I don't think the Falcons are a gimme. Colts are definitely not a gimme. That's going to be a tough playoff game. Um,
for New England.
Just that's going to be a playoff type atmosphere because both teams are going to be
Yeah,
clawing just to try and get it into the playoffs.
yeah.
Um, it's not an easy road for the Patriots coming in my opinion. It can be
No,
done, obviously, but it's similar to the AFC South and Tennessee. I think the Bills are the only one. I'm not even going to look at their schedule, like because they're going to win that division. I feel.
I would say the Bills are pretty much a lock to win the division,
Yeah.
even if they split with the Patriots.
Oh yeah. Even if they split with the Patriots, they would need to fall off the deep end to really come close to lose that division. But all right. So now we say all that, and where does that leave us? So that means Tennessee. I mean, the Colts can, but I still think Tennessee now is in a position where they are going to win the division. I think they're playing
Yeah.
too well, even with all these injuries. They're playing too well. Um, the AFC North. Who do you think is going to win that division?
In the AFC North, man, the Bengals are playing really well.
They're playing well, but they're still tied with the Ravens, though. Like,
No, well, but they have a tiebreaker. Right now, the Ravens are 4-2 in the conference and 0-1 in the division, uh, and they still have to play the Browns twice and the Steelers twice, and then the Bengals one more time.
yeah, and so I mean, I think that
So
that's going to be
I,
some
I,
opportunity for Baltimore to increase. Like they still have 5 division games left, and the Browns and the Steelers are currently not at 100%. Well, the Steelers are at
true, but
100%. They're just not a good team.
they don't play the Browns until the end of November. So
Okay.
pretty much a month from now. I think the Browns should be somewhat healthy by then. If not, then yes, I agree. But then they still have to go to the Steelers. They play the Packers, and then to close out the season, they're going to play the Rams and the Steelers, who are also trying to get into the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
that could be for the division for the Rams as they close out the season.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that I think the Rams or the Ravens won't make a push for it. I just think the Bengals are playing really well, and I think they're probably the healthiest team in that division. Actually, I don't think they are the healthiest team in that division.
You just jinxed the shit out of them. You just jinxed them
Well,
so bad.
well,
I'm
sorry.
just giving you a hard time. I'm just giving you a hard
Yeah,
time.
send the hate mail to Tyler's email.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
But no, so I think the Bengals win that division.
You think the Bengals win that division?
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's okay. All right, I'll go with it. I mean, just with the way it. The biggest thing for me is their defense. Obviously, I don't think their offense is going to fall off. I think they have too many weapons. Um,
Hmm.
but if their defense stays one of the better defenses in the league, I definitely think that they can win that division because they'll shut down the Ravens again, they'll shut down the Browns twice,
Yeah.
and they'll beat the Steelers again for sure, and that's what they need. Okay,
Hmm.
so lastly, the division, the AFC West, ISU for the last one. So I'll go with this one personally. I
Yeah.
think the Chargers are going to turn it around. If I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, didn't the Chargers beat the Raiders?
They did, but the Chargers had a bye last week, so the Raiders technically have a better record with 5 wins over the Chargers 4.
Okay, and so
So
then they still have to have a buy then in return. But if
yeah,
I'm looking at their schedule, the Chargers schedule, they can beat the Patriots this week. That's going to be a tough one. But then they're playing Philadelphia next the week after. They should win that game. They can beat the Vikings. I think that's going to be a high scoring game. They should beat the Steelers. They should beat the Broncos. I think they can beat the Bengals. They'll beat the Giants. I think they can beat the Chiefs again. That one's in LA. Not that that
yeah,
matters. But then they're also playing the Texans and Broncos again. I think that they have an easier schedule coming in, while the Raiders have a little bit of a tougher road. Perks
yeah,
of being last in your division last year. So I'm honestly going. I
yeah.
think the Chargers are going to turn it around, or not really turn it around. I mean, they're on pace with the Raiders.
They just
Um,
had a bye, and then they have 2 somewhat bad losses to the Cowboys and
uh,
the
the
Ravens.
Ravens.
They
Yeah,
got shellacked by the Ravens just because that they ran the ball all over them.
yeah, yeah.
So, but I
Okay.
think that is our 4 division winners mid-season. Uh,
Yeah,
Ban- uh, because I agree with you. I think the Chargers are going to win. Do you think the Bengals are going to win their division as well?
yeah. Only because then I mean, I'll disagree with that. I will agree with it only because who I think is going to be the 5 seed is going to be Baltimore.
Yeah,
I think the team is elite. I think they can still beat the Bengals. But also, if you just
yeah,
look at their record right now, they're 5-2. They're 2 games above where the Steelers are at.
yeah,
2.5 games up where like the Patriots, Colts, and all those teams are at. They just have
yeah.
so much farther of an advantage with. My math is correct. 10 more games left to play this season.
Mhm.
If the number is 10 to at least be number 7, they're already halfway there. And I think that they're able that they should be able to do it. Let me double check this right here because this they have a bye this week, but then they are playing the Vikings. That'll be a tough one. They can win that one, but it'll be
Mhm.
tough. They'll beat the Dolphins. I think they should beat the Bears. They can beat the. Then they have this stretch, and this will be a huge stretch. This is going to be the biggest stretch for the Ravens. Browns on the 28th, Steelers on the 5th of December, Browns on the 12th. 3 straight
Yeah,
division games in a row. I think it's going to be a huge tell for them because then the final 4 games of the season is going to be tough for them. So, but that being said,
yeah,
though, I think that they can get to 10. I really do. I'm going to
yeah.
put them at the.
They have a
I,
good start. All they got to do is really go 500 through
yeah,
the rest of the year. Um, but so I think that kind of leaves us with one spot left because if you have Bengals, Chargers, Titans, Buffalo in the top 4, then Ravens at 5. I would want to say 6 would go to whoever doesn't win the division between the Chargers and the Raiders.
yeah,
I think that is who it most likely goes to. So then, really, you have 5 teams vying for one spot.
yeah. I think all of them could easily take that spot. Different than the NFC, where it's like none of these teams really deserve the playoffs, but at the same time,
Yeah.
they like one of them will make it.
Hmm.
I think you can make a case for a majority of these teams on making the playoffs. I think the Steelers are the weakest of the teams. I think the Browns, if the Browns get healthy, I think it's going to be tough for these teams that are behind them
Hmm.
to come back. They do have some tiebreakers. So, for example, the Chiefs have a tiebreaker over Cleveland. Um,
Yeah.
the Steelers might be able to get a tiebreaker. I don't think they played. I don't think the Colts and Browns play. Nor do
No.
the Patriots and the Browns play. So that'll be a
And the
tiebreaker
Patriots
game.
and the Colts.
And the
So,
Patriots and the Colts.
with all that being said, of these 5 teams, who do you think gets that 7 seed?
I'm gonna have to lean towards the Browns. They have, I think, since they're already a game up. They are going to be playing the Steelers this week, and even without Baker Mayfield, I think that they can still win that game, especially with Nick Chubb coming back. And I think they have a couple of easier games than some of the other teams. It's a little bit easier schedule. But that being said, it's still going to be tough. They still have a lot of division games left to play. So they still got to play the Ravens twice. They got to play the Bengals twice. They got to play the Steelers one more time. Patriots, Packers, Raiders as well. The only lock win I see is them playing against the Lions. So
That's interesting.
It's nothing really more. I think the Browns are that good of a team. I think that they have their issues. I think if they're fully healthy, I think that they're a really good team. But it's more along, if you look at the schedule that the Colts and the Patriots have to go through, and then also then the eye test for the Chiefs, and the same thing with the schedule with the Steelers, and also the eye test as well. I just think that they're just going to end up being the ones that kind of pull it out, you know?
Mm-hmm. See, that's so for me, I think the Colts are the team that are going to take it because they play the Jaguars twice, then they play the Jets and the Texans one more time. And then a lot of their difficult games left. So they do have to go to the Cardinals, but they play the Buccaneers at home and they play the Raiders at home. And their next game against the Titans are at home. So even if let's say they win. What? 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold on, wait, let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that puts them at what, 7 and 4 at the moment. And then they have to beat the Titans.
Mm-hmm.
So 8 and 4. They'll probably lose to the Buccaneers and the Cardinals, and then they have to beat the Patriots and the Raiders to go. I think that'd be 11 and 6.
Yeah.
So they, in my opinion, don't really have to beat a whole lot of top tier teams because if they, I left the Bills off that. But anyways, so then 10 and 7. But if they just beat a bunch of average teams, I think that they would get in the playoffs off of a tiebreaker because the Buccaneers and the Cardinals aren't in the AFC, so they will have a conference tiebreaker over teams like the Patriots, who are 3-1 in the conference, but are what 0-3 outside of the conference. So I think the Colts are the team that are going to pull it out. I think they're the most talented team. They don't necessarily have the easiest road, but
yeah,
I think the Colts are the team right now that I look at and just like I think they are significantly better than a lot of these other teams. So
yeah, no, that's fair. It's interesting seeing that you're not including your Patriots on there. I don't think that they should be counted out as well. I just think that they have a tough schedule as well that I don't know if they'd be able to overcome.
Well, I think they have a tough stretch.
Yeah.
So here's the thing with the Patriots: if they win this weekend against the Chargers, that would put them at 500. Put the Chargers at 4-3. Then they go to the Panthers. They play a hurt Browns team, and then they go to Atlanta. And that, to me, if they can go 3-1 through that stretch, then I think they can make a legitimate push. They're going to have to beat the Colts, and then their last 2 games are against the Jaguars and the Dolphins. But that would put them at 10 and 7, and realistically, that's in playoff contention.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's going to be crazy. It really is. There's a lot of matchups and a lot of key a lot of key marquee games that's going to decide the playoff. We'll have to do this again after another 7 weeks, probably like week 14, to really kind of see how close we are and see where all the teams ended up.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I don't have too much else to add. So I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Tracy Take. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Put down in the comments which team you think we left out and make a case for your team down there as well. And we will see you guys next time.